So great talking about KYC after a privacy panel. That's going to be fun, especially if you plan to just present the technical solution. Maybe just to quickly talk about identity and privacy before we head right in. One strong belief is that there is a way how to get privacy while having identity. And that is something that we definitely do not have right now because we're using very centralized systems to get identity on-chain and use it there. And that's, for me, the central part of what we need to change to bring it back to the users. So I want to introduce the idOS to you, the Identity Operating System, which we just released. And I want to start with taking a look at the state we're in today. So basically, as a user, every time you go to something that involves finance, especially when it comes to the real world, you have to re-identify yourself, right? That doesn't necessarily just need to be identity, but any type of proof of personhood, of uniqueness. And it's not just in one ecosystem, but it is also in the ecosystem itself across steps. And that's quite hard to for usability. I sometimes compare this to the investment that we made into bridges of liquidity between different ecosystems compared to the bridges that we build for users to go from dApp to dApp and from ecosystem to ecosystem. So what we believe is that identity is actually needed to cross the chasm for adoption of the space in general, to go from a place where users have to re-identify all the time to a place where users own their data and they can give other people access to it. Because most of the use cases that we're excited about, for example, when we're talking about Gnosis Pay, do require that step today. We're not just building that ourselves, but with some great partners. We believe that this is super important to not just have a technical framework out that then needs to find adoption, but that we actually have building that with partners that are consuming it, or with others like Will that have been working in the space for quite some time and can help us with scaling databases. So what is the idOS? It is two things. It's a decentralized storage and it's an access management layer. So it's basically a federation of nodes that you see on the left side that sync data across those nodes and run a consensus mechanism to assure that it has the same state. What that does is that as a user you can be sure that the request that you have, that you make towards the network is actually being executed. On the other hand, you have the access management protocol. You should be in charge of your data. So it's basically the ability to check if someone has the authority to access a certain data package. And how exactly that works, I will hopefully be able to show you here, if that works. You might need to click. Well, anyway, it's not nicely animated now, but I can lead you through it. So how it works is a user has a couple of ways how to interact with the idOS. So you could, for example, just put in your own data, like preferences. You would say, well, I prefer dark mode, for example. That's obviously nothing that someone else needs to verify. If I'm saying about myself, well, I'm a human being, that's in itself not so valuable though. So you will need someone else to confirm that I'm a human being. This is what identity verifiers do. So basically a user goes to the verifier. This is always central, right? There are also ways how to solve it in a decentralized way. But let's just assume it's a normal KYC provider. You go there, you get a data package back, a verifiable credential. that is signed by the verifier. Now, the user takes that verifiable credential and encrypts that with his private key, with the public key, I guess, and puts that in the decentralized storage. Now, if there is any dApp, can be on Near, can be on Gnosis, can be on Ethereum, wanting to access that data package, they request an access grant from the user. The user grants this access grant, decrypts the data again, because otherwise the node wouldn't be able to do anything with it. Decrypts that with the user's, with the dApp receiver's public key, and puts it back into the idOS. That has one big advantage, which is that there's data permanence. So unlike if you have an identity wallet, you have access to that data even if the user isn't there at that point. The user still has control over it because the access grant request can always be revoked. So you can say, well, I gave you access to the data in the first place, but I changed my mind. You know, from a UX perspective, you guys know that from typical OAuth. So if you're using Twitter and you want to give someone access, you can always revoke that. So the idOS is self-sovereign, chain agnostic, composable, and compliant. So what does it mean? Users encrypt their own data and control the authentication and the access, which makes it self-sovereign, chain agnostic. That's actually pretty cool because you can access it from any type of chain. The only thing we need to do is, if it's not an EVM chain, is to understand the public-private key cryptography and just enable it in the nodes for you to be able to also access the same profile from just any different ecosystem. It's composable because you can build on top of it. You can use it for any type of data. You can build an analytic tool on top of it. You can build a privacy tool on top of it to issue zero-knowledge proofs. And it's compliant, and this is actually quite important because right now, and this is what I was talking about in the beginning, right now we have an equilibrium where because there are no perfect solutions, we kind of fall back into the worst that we could adopt, which is just centralized KYC. So you're just throwing users into centralized KYC providers, and you're doing all of that with centralized databases, which are not composable in any way, not interoperable, terrible in many ways. The reason why is because the solutions that we are proposing are not really compliant for data privacy regulation reasons, because, for example, you cannot delete your data if you just put it on chain, like Coinbase just did with the attestations. There has been some debate about, like, is it cool to put like clear text country data of you or of your address on chain that you cannot delete? I would personally say that's not a real good solution. And the other one is for actual real-world financial applications like Gnosis Pay. If we want to dabble in the real world, we need to adhere to the rules of the real world, otherwise it's just not going to work. And again, if you think about the crossing the chasm type, scaling in terms of users that actually use on-chain applications, we believe that this is super important. So you can not just put KYC data into the idOS, but like any type of data. And you can also use it for any type of application. So for example, you want to use identity for securing your account to get access again to your account. You would be able to do that and build it. We've been talking about decentralized identity for probably the last 9 years or 10 years, I don't know. Vitalik writes about it every 3 years or so, urging us to adopt something. And the solutions that we have are pretty wide. We've been talking about soulbound tokens, identity wallets, we have tons of monolithic DID chains, we have regular decentralized storage, and nothing really caught on. And we believe that this is for 5 reasons, some of which I've already mentioned, like compliance. It just doesn't work if you want to do a certain use case to be compliant and then it's not compliant. The permanent data availability is, in my view, something that's a bit overlooked because identity wallets are quite popular these days. I personally don't think they will work because dApps have 2 choices that they can do. They can either, once the user comes to them, ditch the data or save it again into centralized databases. Yeah, most of those solutions are not chain agnostic, require too many types of parties to integrate it. So like wallets, ecosystems, dApps, and like one side or 2 sides are already hard enough. And don't have an end-to-end solution. So the infrastructure layer isn't enough in this case. You need to actually be able to service it. Where do we see this going? We strongly believe that there will be a player for for the identity standard, just like there is for other types of infrastructure provisionings. If that's going to be us or not, that remains to be seen. But I strongly believe that the decision or the change in the market is going to be this year, because there's just a strong surge towards one narrative that Gnosis with Gnosis Pay is actually enabling quite a bit, which is to finally have a type of decentralized bank stack or financial module that you can just plug in. And we already have seen or this morning heard about how hard it is to just get the debit card use case going. And there are 16 different other things needed to actually have the modularized bank, like deposits, lending, etc. But if we get there, and even if we just have 5 of those different modules, it's going to be so strong because you can start a neobank with 0 infrastructure cost, with 0 knowledge about compliance, and just implement it into your application or decentralized application. And that's something that we're super excited about. Yeah, so we're live already on Near and actually also on Ethereum. If you want to go to dashboard, well, actually I have the link here if you want to check it out. And yeah, that's it. That's the idOS.